Good morning, folks. It's 9 o'clock on Tuesday, the 5th of January. This is Boris Johnson bringing you the first Ask Boris of 2016. Your chance to put any question you like to me or my trusty help me, Mr. Nick Ferrari, who's over here, and I will do my best with his encouragement to give you an answer. So the numbers for you to get your questions on the air are 0345 6060 973 or email boris@lbc.co.uk. And don't forget, you can also watch Ask Boris on the website lbc.co.uk. Let's go straight to our first caller. Nick, it's Peter in Holborn.
Good morning, Boris. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Peter. Yes, how are you?
Yes, I'm fine. I believe Mr. Khan has proposed improving and lowering London fare prices and either cancelling or bringing in an overhead railway. I wonder if you can match this.
Mr. Cameron, did you say?
No, this is Mr. Khan. Let's hear a little of this. So you're absolutely right, Peter. Sadiq Khan was on this show yesterday. He's promising if he gets in 2015, the price of fares will not rise. Here's a little of what he told me.
It's a combination of ending the expensive vanity projects, the cable car, no more public subsidy for the cable car.
How much does how much is the cable car costing?
The cable car is roughly speaking £5 million a year.
Now, suppose the cable car is no longer viable without the local government money.
It goes.
Closes?
It's going to close. I mean, if we can't...
It just goes?
It's going to have to go. I mean, if we can't... I'm setting out a tough package of measures today. So if, for example, it's not possible to run the cable car without the subsidy of £5 million for a year, I'm afraid it'll have to close down.
What a loss that would be. Mr. Khan saying how he would find £400 million. Peter, your call. Mr. Mayor, your response.
Peter, well, yes, I have to say, I think that is, if that's the seriously being offered as a proposal for running transport in London, it really is a tragedy because the cuts
people would love it.
The cuts in spending that would involve would do serious damage to our ability to upgrade to put in the subsurface signalling, to get on with huge projects for the improvement of transport in London. People have seen massive improvements in the underground over the last few years, and it would be an absolute disaster. You would be taking about £383 million, £450 million out of the TfL budget,
which is spent on consultancy and agency staff.
Where is that money going to?
Mr. Mayor,
where is that money going to be found? It is going to be found. It's going to be found by cutting huge projects, which is the benefit of London.
And it is and by the way,
it is nonsensical. Can I just finish? Because there was a lot of nonsense that talked about the cable car. The cable car is the only piece of transport infrastructure in this city that actually covers both its capital and its revenue costs. Last year, the cable car actually heaped up an operating profit of £1 million. It is insane. The proposal we're hearing would actually cost Londoners, cost TfL money, and do absolutely nothing to deliver a better service for Londoners. To take £450 million out of TfL's budget would be a tragedy. It would mean cuts to the work that's been done on the Piccadilly line. It would mean we'd have to delay the new trains for the Piccadilly line. It would mean projects like Bank Station would have to be deferred. It would mean congestion on our underground, and it would be an absolute disaster for the city. So I really hope
how come we spend £383 million per annum at TfL on consultants and agency staff, and presumably it is a figure that's been akin to that all the time you've been mayor. £383 million.
It's a totally ridiculous question because everybody because everybody understands that in a huge transport organisation that is investing in the transformation, investing in the transformation of this city, you are going to be paying for top-rank consultants of all kinds, whether from architects, designers, quantity surveyors, engineers. There are huge numbers of people who are involved in the upgrading and the improvement of our network.
Do you know how many of your executives at TfL make more than £400,000 a year?
Can I tell you that there is no other organisation in this country...
Could you answer the question first?
I can't give you the figure off the top of my head, but there is no organisation in this country... There is no organisation in this country that is engaged in such a sustained programme of investment in infrastructure. And if you want, and if Londoners want us to shortchange on that investment and not to get the best possible people for the improvement and the upgrade of the tube network in this city.
Is it really necessary?
The road network, I think it will be absolutely disastrous.
Mr. Mayor, do you know how many people make more than £300,000 per annum? No.
I don't have.
Okay, so let's do this a different way.
But
the number of people at TfL, excuse me one moment, sir. The number of people at TfL making more money than the Prime Minister is 48.
Yes.
What the hell are they doing?
I'll tell you what they're doing. They are doing a fantastic job of keeping this city moving.
Really?
Yes.
Really? Tell that to some of the motorists listening to me right now.
Let me tell you that this under this mayoralty, we've seen record investments in transport in London. We have seen London turned into the most dynamic part of the, not just the UK, but the European economy. It now contributes 25% of UK GDP, and that is because it has a world-class transport network. And we've invested in the tube. We've invested.
Is it?
It is, and we've invested
right
in.
Now,
we've invested. Yeah, well, we can come on to the cycle superhighways and all the rest of it. We've invested in the tube. We've invested in the overground railways. We're going to go forward with programmes to unite the overground and the underground railways to take London forward. And believe me, this city is built on transport infrastructure investment. You look back through the 19th century, the early 20th century, that was how London developed, that was how London took off. That was how it became the greatest economy, the greatest urban economy in the world in the late 18th, early 19th century. And that is what you're seeing again today. It would be utterly foolhardy to cut spending now when the population is growing. I mean, this guy, the Labour candidate, wants to cut investment in transport.
No, he wants
by
he wants to freeze fares.
Yes, but he's taking £500 million.
I appreciate that, but his goal is to freeze the fares.
He's taking £500 million out of investment at a time when the population is going to rise by another 2 million over the next 20, 30 years. That is absolutely crazy. Okay. We have to make sure that people can have a decent journey to work.
Let's see what Peter made of that minor tussle. Peter, your response.
Yes, I would also like to ask Boris if he is proud of the fact his government have brought in an even worse system than nationalisation. I worked on it, my father, grandfather, great-grandfather, so I'm in a position to know this. And when I see large number of people on the track now, they clearly don't know what they're doing. Recently, yes, I mean, I remember...
We're getting a little bit away from his purview, if you will. But
I think the question would be... I think what Peter's asking there is, should we be taking the rail back into public ownership? I think actually there are arguments both ways. I think you do get good value sometimes out of having the incentives that the private sector brings, and I wouldn't want to lose that. But what Peter is right in saying is that when we were trying to upgrade the Jubilee line, as you may remember, Nick, yes. We went through a very difficult period with our contractors. I
was supportive all the way through.
And you did back us, and we decided that actually the only way to get this thing done and to ram it through in the way that it needed to happen was to take it back within TfL, and that is what we did. And we've now got the Jubilee line running faster than ever before, 3 miles an hour faster, and that is what we're doing with the Victoria line and all the other tube lines. And I'm sorry to say, I really think, and I had this argument, and I'm sorry to sound so sort of vehement about this morning.
You don't have to apologise at all.
I had this argument with you, with the previous mayor for many, many years, because they always come up and they promise 1 year that they're going to cut the fares or freeze the fares. And what happens is that they run up a huge bill. The result is that they are forced to forego huge quantities of income, and they don't make the investment that is necessary. They then come back to the fare payer a few years later, and they put fares up by a whacking amount in order to plug the black hole. That is not the way to do it. What we've tried to do is to be fair to London, and I appreciate people's feelings that fares are expensive. I understand people's feelings, but we've tried to be fair to Londoners and to be consistent and to bear down on fares as much as we can, to hold them as low as we possibly can whilst keeping that investment going. And we go now to Andrew. Forgive me. There you go, Peter. Thank you. We go now to Andrew in Halifax.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning, sir.
I'd like to ask Boris. Hi. I'd like to ask Boris if he thinks it was right for Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party to suspend Simon Danczuk.
to suspend Simon Danczuk. Well, listen, I'm not going to comment on the internal travails of the Labour Party. I think that is something that I think the Labour Party is perfectly capable of making a spectacle of itself without my assistance, Andrew. I think I'm going to leave them to their delectable
Simon Danczuk has a view on you. Let's play that to you.
I do think there is an interesting dichotomy between people like Boris Johnson, who make a lot of money as a Member of Parliament and indeed Mayor of London, whilst writing for the Daily Telegraph and the right-wing media, and who has a very colourful personal life, and yet a working-class lad like me in Rochdale, who writes for some of the national newspapers and has a working-class, colourful personal life. I get lambasted, whilst Boris playing it out with debutantes and all the rest of it in this upper class world doesn't get lambasted.
Well,
what would you say to Mr. Jantuk's assertion that you get away with?
I really don't know what he's talking about, and I all I can say is I have no desire whatever to intervene or superimpose my own judgment on the judgments that Jeremy Corbyn has to make. And I think the best thing we can do with the Labour Party at the moment is leave them to their own delectable disputations about whatever Mr. Danczuk is talking about. We go now to Cameron. Is that Dave? Cameron in Weybridge.
I only know him as Prime Minister. Cameron, you're on the radio.
Cameron.
Good morning.
Okay, good morning.
Good morning.
I have a question for Mr. Johnson.
Sir.
Mr. Johnson, if you remember 13 years ago, millions of people in this country and other parts of the world showed their opposition to the Iraq war.
Yes.
The only one body and person could have stopped Tony Blair from that madness was Ian Duncan Smith and the Conservative Party.
That's absolutely correct, Cameron. And go on.
So what is your question?
Well, the question is, I suppose, why didn't we do anything?
Yeah. The question is, we see today that the byproduct of that war, which was against all international laws and norms, is ISIL and Daesh. That is byproduct of that illegal war.
Yes, I mean, I think, Cameron, where I start to part company with you is any suggestion that we can kind of exculpate people who are involved in murdering or beheading British people or others as members of Daesh or ISIL in that part of the world by reference to previous British foreign policy. These people are sick, brainwashed fanatics and thugs, and I really think that it's a long day's march to blame Britain or British foreign policy for the way they behave. And I think it's very, very important to make that distinction. Otherwise, we will get nowhere, frankly.
Why aren't we being tougher on what's happening in Saudi Arabia, then, if we should be so against execution everywhere?
Well, I think we have been tough on Saudi Arabia. I think the Prime Minister has condemned the executions. As I understand it, he's not going on some visit to Saudi Arabia. The question is, it's a reasonable
30 countries to be challenged by diplomats.
It's a reasonable
despite
question.
Executing more than 90 people. Why do we look differently on them on other countries?
It's a reasonable question because people will say why don't we sever relations with Saudi Arabia?
Yeah, why don't?
Let's get back to what Cameron in Weybridge was just asking us, which was about what's happening in Daesh, what's happening in
but I'm moving it on to that question. You talk about execution everywhere.
Yeah, well, exactly. And the answer is that you've got a situation which requires us to be cooperating with the Saudis, with terror.
So we allow them to execute 90 people a year?
I'm afraid, they have their... We can't... it'd be very difficult physically for us to intervene to stop them.
We could have put them on this list, couldn't we?
Let me just complete the point I'm trying to make, which is that
we challenge other countries.
Which is that we're trying to build a coalition to sort out the horrific mess in Syria that Cameron rightly describes. Saudi Arabia is, for all its faults, is a vital part, and I don't approve of the death penalty. I don't approve of what has happened there. But for all its faults, Saudi Arabia is a vital part of that coalition, and it would be crazy at this juncture for us to sever relations with them. That's my answer to you on that point, Nick. And on Cameron's wider point, I just think that there is a vital to keep that distinction. If we get into a psychology of endlessly blaming ourselves for the actions of these jihadis, we will get nowhere. We will be continually exculpating them, which is exactly what they want to hear.
Yes, but it is extraordinary that Saudi's not on this list has been revealed today. The list of where countries should be challenged over continued use of the death penalties. Countries such as Singapore, Jordan, Barbados, between them.
Forgive me. You've got. Have you? But is that the? I haven't seen that
front page of the Independent.
Forgive
today.
Me. Well, look.
For some reason, Saudi 90 a year. But you're saying that they need to stay on the list.
Well, how many are executed in the United States of America?
So you're saying we should break?
I'm just saying. You visit the United States of America quite a lot. Have you thought of boycotting? Have you thought of stop going?
Because I'm not in a position of power in the government, am I?
Well, right.
Make a blind bit of difference what I do.
I think the United States would quail the news that Nick Ferrari was not coming on holiday.
It just
to
seems
Florida.
a strange.
I think it might be a matter that would be big news.
If you said,
come on, here's your chance to make. If you said, I'm going to forego my trip to Disneyland, come on. Nick Ferrari is not going to Disneyland in protest at America's use of the death penalty. Is that what you're saying now?
No, I'm not saying that at all.
Well, what are you saying?
No, it's nothing to do with what I am not an elected politician, thank God.
Well, you're here on Ask Boris. You're here. You're my trusty helpmeet.
Right,
you're my trusty helpmeet, and I'm occasionally allowed to bat a question across to you.
We go on to the next question if we may.
Estelle in Chelsea.
Thank you. Yes, indeed.
Estelle, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. Good morning to everybody.
Good morning.
Happy New Year.
Oh, how lovely.
Mayor Boris, please tell me, do you think that it was right to give the environmental bosses a £300,000 bonus when they hadn't solved the flooding problem and all the suffering that's been caused? And really, 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 I'd love to take you to Holland to see how they solve their flooding problem.
Well, my strong view about this is we've got this National Infrastructure Commission coming, beginning its work. We've got a chronic problem in the UK. You may not believe it now, but we've got a problem of water shortages in the south and oversupply of water in some other parts of the country. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we had a proper national water grid that moved water, which is very heavy, very difficult, to transport? You need a real canal system from one part of the country to the other. I think it'd be a fantastic project for the UK.
How much would that cost?
Well, it would get people working. It would be an absolutely brilliant and beautiful thing. And we go through long periods in the south. It may not, as I say, it may not seem like it now after this very, very long wet period, but we go through long periods in the south when we have too little water, and there are large parts of the country that have too much. I think a national water grid, a canalised system,
those environmental agency staff,
and you've just been monstering me quite rightly about. Oh, not quite rightly. I mean, you've been.
I'm glad you.
No. Let me take. I take that back. From a journalistic point of view, you're right to raise the question. I hope that the answer is one that at least has logic, and the answer is that when you want very good people, you have to pay them well. I can't comment, Estelle, on
48 people at TfL making more than the PM.
We're talking, and by the way, I'll go. Well, if you're going to go back to that,
do you think the Prime Minister should earn more?
I think it is absolutely right that people who are investing in the transport infrastructure of the greatest city on earth
and people who are screwing up the water,
absolutely
should they
brilliant.
get £300,000?
And they are brilliant. And if you look at what's happened,
the water people who screwed up the defences, should they get £300,000 in bonuses?
I can't. I don't know which particular individuals Estelle is talking about.
We must have a view, just in basic principle, good or bad.
My basic principle is if people screw up, they should have their bonuses docked. Is my basic view.
Thank you, Estelle. Thank you. We move on.
And that is, by the way, what we do at TfL. And we go now to Ahmed in New Malden.
Good morning, Mr. Johnson.
Good morning, sir.
Nick.
Hello.
My question to you, Mayor, is that London is facing a real heightened terror threat from these Islamist terrorists, and yet we keep talking so casually about these jihadist John and his the current spokesperson.
I rather agree with you.
We keep saying whether we should allow these people back into the country or not.
Well, I'm rather with you. I think, and I have to say, speaking as a punter, I just cannot stand endlessly seeing these pictures of masked individuals on the front pages of my newspapers or on the TV. This is exactly what they want. I know it's very difficult, and we can't get back into I don't think we want to go back to the era of the 1980s when we tried to get Jerry Adams off the airwaves and all that kind of nonsense. But I think people should bear in mind that when you've got these sickos doing these grotesque videos and all the rest of it, they are hoping that they will be on the front page of the paper in the morning. That is exactly what they want. For my money, for my taste, I think it's absolutely despicable. Now, what should we be doing when they come back? I mean, I think we should be arresting them. They've almost invariably they will have committed a serious offence, and we should be putting them on trial.
Can I make one more point, please?
Go ahead, Ahmed.
These people are radicalized. They are not going to change. They are committing atrocities. In fact, we should be ashamed of allowing all this to happen before our eyes. And, we, as, Western countries, we are still playing politics. If we really were resolute and determined to eliminate these people, we could have done it like we have done it in so many other countries.
What would you give an example, Ahmed? Could you give me an example, Ahmed, of another country where you think that they've had more success in eliminating radicalized individuals? Where do you think they've done it better than we have?
Look at Bosnia and so on, Kosovo.
Bosnia.
Croatia. I don't think that's a great example, respectfully.
You mean where you had massive ethnic cleansing of Muslims?
Yes.
Right.
It has been
Croatia, where settlements were removed and purged, and there were pogroms against one ethnic group or another.
Of course.
Right.
Resolute, we can finish these people off. But
okay, Ahmed. But look, I mean, all I'm saying is, I think that your methods are unlikely to prove attractive to many listeners. What we got to do, we've got to make sure that our kids growing up in our schools are given to understand that they're living in a great country, that they are.
Why are these
lucky.
two from London?
It's just tragic.
Actually, why are there three from London? The guy in his 30s is from East London. The mum and kid are from South East London.
Because
what's happening in London? This is your town.
Because it absolutely grieves me, and it's because there has been for a long time in our educational culture an idea that it's all relative and everybody's values are the same. I don't think that isn't good enough for me. I want everybody to feel that they belong to this society, to feel that Britain, the values of pluralism, of tolerance are ones that are absolutely vital. And yeah, if you ask me, do I want to see loads more faith schools? I'll be honest with you, I'm a bit uneasy about it. I've made my views plain to my friends in government for a long time. As mayor of a great multi-racial city, I don't want to see too much balkanisation in education. I understand that there's a long-standing tradition of some faiths having schools where they.
Which you accept,
and you can't go around demolishing ancient institutions. I'm just not so sure, as a matter of principle, that I want to see everywhere. Well, when I went to a school in London, everybody was jumbled in together. That's the way it should be done, in my view. Okay, I accept that there's long-standing traditions and that many of these schools are great. But I want to see them having their doors open to people of all faiths and teaching values. So
does Ofsted have sharp enough teeth?
Well, I'm not going to comment on the sharpness of the teeth of Ofsted, but some schools plainly in the last few years have become taken over. You've seen the stuff about the Trojan horse affair. That plainly was not wholly without foundation. There are schools where there are legitimate matters for concern.
So what should Ofsted be doing?
And my view is that Ofsted should be very, very tough on these questions.
So is it tough enough?
As I understand it, and this is something that I obviously have made quite a lot of inquiries about, that sort of problem, the Trojan horse problem, is not one that is so far thought to manifest itself in London. There have been obviously other cities in the UK where we've seen it, but I've made extensive inquiries about this, and it does not seem at the moment that we have that kind of problem in London schools. But, I get back to my main point. I want to see schools where basically everybody's together, everybody speaks English, everybody understands British values, British history, feels proud of this country. And, it shouldn't be so difficult.
The granddad of that little boy wants him brought home. Do you?
Well, the 4-year-old.
Yes.
I think it's just heartbreaking to see what's happening to that kid. He cannot possibly know what or understand what he's saying, what he's being made to do.
So should he somehow be brought home? Would you welcome him back to London?
This is child abuse. There is no question at all. And I would certainly, yes, I think but as I say,
but not mum. You don't want mum back.
If and when these people seek to come back, they should be arrested, and they should then be.
But this is a British child under abuse, being abused.
Yeah, you can't arrest a 4-year-old, but I think the child is a victim of child abuse.
Yeah.
And the child is he's as I understand it, a British national, and I think we have a duty of care. Plainly, his interests are not going to be well served by remaining with that family, in my view. This will be a controversial point of view. Others will say you'd be wrong to take him away from the mother and so on.
We take other kids away in far less circumstances.
We do. I know, but I've said this before, that I think that children on the path of radicalisation are at risk of abuse and should be taken away. I remember being strongly criticised for that, but I think that kid should, as I say, be taken away from his parents, and he will have to do our best for him now.
Well, put him a granddad. Granddad wants him down in Deptford. Well, that'll work.
Yeah, poor guy. You've got to feel sorry. You've got to feel sorry for that family. You really do. Can we go to Terry in Banstead, please?
Yeah, morning, gentlemen.
Hello, sir.
Right, I want to talk to Boris about his favourite subject.
Come on.
Taxes.
Right.
Yes.
Now, I'm a London taxi driver, right, yeah?
Yes.
I want to know why Transport for London gave Uber a licence. Now, if you just let me finish here, right?
I didn't even start.
I quote you something from Transport for London's own rules.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, come on.
Any app that puts a customer directly in touch with a private hire driver without the booking being accepted by an operator first is illegal, even if the licensed driver is also a licensed operator. The booking must be accepted at a licensed premises. A booking cannot be accepted by a private hire operator in a vehicle or through a mobile phone.
All right.
Okay. Well, listen, Terry.
And also, can I just say one other
Come
point?
on,
briefly, because it's fascinating as it is. I don't need the whole code written out.
Yes,
read out.
Yes, we do. Come on.
They've got no landline, right, number to ring them up. They've got no offices, yeah? They pay no tax in this country, right, yeah? Why did TfL give them a licence?
Well, the short answer is because the TfL legal opinion, which has, I'm afraid, been confirmed in the courts, as you will remember, Terry, was that there was no legal way we could stop it, and that they were going to provide a service that would be of value to people in the city. And indeed, I'm afraid the reality is that many Londoners now use that service, but they also use black cabs. And I think the best hope for the black cab trade is to continue to do what they do so well, and that's to provide a great premium service by people who know how the city works, who can give real help and understanding to their passengers, and whose vehicles are icons around the world, and whose service is loved and valued by tourists.
But on the subject of Uber, where are you with a suggestion by David Plouffe, if I'm saying that's correctly, the chief advisor, saying any motorist could become an Uber driver on a daily commute with a touch of button on their phone? Will make it possible for them to then take customers on board.
Well, I think the obvious problem with that is that we don't want to see anybody given the right to ply for hire on the streets of London. We don't know who they are. We don't know whether they've passed their CRB test. We don't know whether they're safe.
This is a bonkers idea. Insurance, safety.
It's not going to happen. So. there's a very, very difficult argument going on here. I appreciate where Terry and his friends of the black cab trade are coming from. They're seeing technology making a big difference to their business. It isn't actually destroying their business. The interesting thing is, they'll tell you sometimes that it is, but actually sometimes
I was just about to ask him, but he's gone.
We have Cabby's cabinet in City Hall. I get the representatives and the LTDA and all the other taxi drivers associations. Grant Davis, everybody comes in, Bob Oddy, the lot of them, and we talk about what's going on. And actually, the last time I said, "Okay, folks, well, give me the lowdown," because they absolutely try and rip me to shreds.
Of course they do.
Of course, quite rightly. Yeah. And I say, "Come on, how is it really? What's going on?" And then last time they all slightly shuffled and they said, "Well, actually, it wasn't that bad at the moment. It wasn't that bad."
Too many cars on the road.
Now,
too many Uber cars on the road. Let's be
there
honest
are,
about it.
and there are, and what we would like and what we're asking the government for is some system of quantity licensing, of restricting the number.
You've been asking that for about 2 years.
They are not keen to do that. But
why?
Because they're
friends of yours.
There's never been, since the private carriage vehicles were first authorised in the 1960s, there's never been a way in which any local authority could actually restrict the numbers.
Hang on, Brighton does.
Do they? You've surprised me.
Yes, I'm going to make up the number.
That's a fact I did not know.
Well, it's important that you have people like me here.
I'm exactly not for the first time.
So all those people at TfL,
you prove your value.
All those people at TfL, £382 million in consultancy and agency. The one damn bloody thing you needed to know, none of them knew.
Come on, are you telling me Brighton already has quantity?
Yeah, they do. I don't know what the number is. 500. I've just made the number up, but they do. They're limited. So one has to die or retire.
Most of our listeners will. That is very, very interesting.
After the news,
but we are doing plenty of other things
on LBC.
Plenty of other things to restrict them.
Right, let's come back to Ask Boris. I'm grateful that we do now know there is a finite number of cabs, just so my listeners are aware in Brighton, and it's.
I'm absolutely indebted to you and to your listeners, Nick, and our listeners, and we will make sure we'll put that into TfL's pipe, make them smoke it, and
which has £382 million worth of consultancy fees.
Sorry, let's just go back on that one. Do you really want to rerun that argument?
We move on to other questions.
Come on, let's be okay. Judy in Brentwood. Judy.
Good morning.
Good morning, Judy.
First of all, I'm a supporter of BJ for Prime Minister.
Boris Johnson for PM. BJ for PM, as we know it, as a shorthand.
Or Brian Johnson. BJ. Anyway.
Now, I voted Conservative in all but the last election because Britain has lost its voice. And I'm concerned that you'll lose your voice, especially in regard to Europe. Is that the idea that David Cameron's got, if he gives you a cabinet place?
Well, look, I've read...
what is the cabinet place you're taking?
Yeah, look, I've read all this stuff, and I just want to be absolutely clear with you, Judy, with Nick, with anybody who may be listening to us still, that, frankly, I've got to do my job in London. That's got months to run. I will not take any other job whilst I'm here.
Full stop. Absolutely no way.
I've told you that before, and it's no
not even in extremis.
It's no surprise to people. I've just got to get on and do this.
So what happens the second week of May?
Well, I will be...
No, I don't know.
I will be a humble backbencher. And on the issue that Judy raises of Europe, I think that there's a limit to the kind of... the Prime Minister's got a negotiation to fulfil and to conduct, and I'm obviously supporting him. My view remains what it always has been.
Well, just remind me what that is.
This is a great opportunity to reform the EU. If we don't get what is good for Britain and for Europe...
And where we find ourselves currently, how would you say Mr Cameron is faring?
Then we should... not hesitate to say no. Because what I think will then happen... And this is very, very important. What I think will then happen is obviously that if the British people were to say we don't think that's good enough, I think that for a minute means that David Cameron has to resign. I think that's total nonsense.
I think he did.
Well, that's for the stuff that you read. I think you can carry on, and I think that the whole
having fought for and tried to negotiate a deal that the British public then reject, you say he stays as Prime Minister.
Of course. And
have you been drinking?
Well, not recently.
Maybe you want to take it up. How could he possibly do that?
Because I think
the public will have voted against him.
What would then happen is that there would be a period in which there would be at least 2 years in which the existing treaties would be enforced.
Can you imagine how your party would fight like ferrets in a sack for 2 years?
They wouldn't. They're not fighting.
You fight as it is.
They're not
it's in
fighting. They're not fighting.
DNA.
That's not true. We're not. It's glutinous harmony prevails. We are backing
glutinous harmony within the Conservative hierarchy at the moment.
We are backing David Cameron. I think he's doing a brilliant job. He's fighting a very tough renegotiation. All I'm saying is, if he doesn't get what he wants and what he needs, I don't think he should feel the slightest.
So Chris Grayling is part of that glutinous harmony, is he? Would you say?
As far as I know, yes.
Yeah, okay.
I don't think he should.
Teresa Villiers, she's all part of it.
Yes, I don't think he should feel the slightest bit abashed, and we should get on and say, okay, that's what we've said. That's what the British public have said. Now, cut us another deal. That's what we should say. And
what? How does that work?
Well, it's axiomatically that's what has got to happen. That's what has got to happen because...
how much does it change by Poland's decision? You heard what Poland is saying today.
Yeah, I think that's very positive.
Just to remind my listeners, saying they could consider the British proposals if NATO bases troops permanently within its borders. The key seems to be this 4-year limit before EU migrants can claim benefits. Is that enough, Mr. Mayor?
Well, I think that's
that 4-year limit.
I think it's very positive.
That's not quite the answer, is it? Is it enough, Mr. Mayor?
Well, I'm going to wait and see what the outcome of the whole negotiation
No, but is 4 years enough, Mr. Mayor?
Well, let's see what the Prime Minister gets. Okay.
But he's not going for any more now, is he? It's like when you're buying a car.
Let's see what the Prime Minister gets. And I think he's playing a tough hand.
It should be more than 4, shouldn't it, Mr. Mayor?
What, more than 4 years? I think 4 years is a pretty good cooling off period. I think I originally proposed 2 years, so 4 years is fine.
Oh, okay. You're happy with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Look, and I think it's quite interesting that the polls are coming in on our side. However, don't forget that the Danes have now said that they're going to close their own borders with Germany. There is plenty of room. All I'm saying is there's plenty of room for flexibility in this whole thing, and there is no reason for the Prime Minister to, not approach this thing with a great deal of confidence and élan.
I think it's Sweden's reintroduced the border checks, isn't it, with Denmark?
I think it's Denmark with Germany. This is the thing I read.
Sweden has reintroduced checkpoints on its border with Denmark.
Denmark's
made points with Germany. Yes, the Schengen's is slowly falling apart, isn't it?
Exactly. So there's all I'm saying is that the clay is wet. It's there's a chance.
I haven't done enough emails. Here we are. This quick one before we come to our last couple of questions. Graham and Bushy, if David Cameron allows Conservative MPs and cabinet ministers to be free to choose whether they are in the stay-in or out camp in the referendum, which one would Boris Johnson side with, in or out, Mr. Mayor?
As I say, I think you've got to be prepared to walk away. But at the moment, I'm backing the Prime Minister to get a great deal for this country and for Europe.
Judy leading the BJ for PM. Thank you, Judy. We move on.
We go to Paul in Warwick.
Good morning, Boris.
Good morning, Paul.
Another question on taxis. At the moment, London's cabbies are only being offered one option for any new black cabs they buy up to 2018.
Right.
Which will require them to shell out well over £40,000. Would you consider offering cabbies much more affordable options like LPG as well as the electric option?
Paul, yes, we certainly will. I don't think that LPG has been excluded, but let me check that, and I'll try and make sure. That I get
you some background on this. For listeners new to this story, Paul, in a sentence, explain, for those who are not part of the cabbie trade or know this industry, what exactly is it you're suggesting or promoting?
Well, at the moment, we heard the previous call about the cabbies struggling or feeling they're struggling to compete with Uber.
Yeah.
And then from 2018, if they're going to be able to bring their new black cabs into London, they're going to have to buy a very expensive, much more expensive electric option, whereas there are other options, technical options available at LPG. For example, Birmingham City
Paul is
Council,
right.
Sorry, fire alarm.
That's right.
Birmingham City Council, which is a Labour council, is actually helping their drivers in Birmingham with a conversion of a taxi from diesel to LPG for just £8,000.
Now that's
right,
interesting.
Paul. Well, I'll look at what's going on in Birmingham. But let me just reassure you, as you know, there are big subsidies that we're putting in for the new low carbon vehicles of all kinds. Yes, electric. We do want to see electric vehicles on the streets, and I think that would be great for London. It would be great for air quality. I think it would be great for taxi drivers. I think people will be very excited about using vehicles that don't belch. Our punters who want to hail a London cab will be even more attracted by them when they are not puffing out great big black plumes of diesel from their rear end, which is what's happening at the moment. And if we can help taxis deliver that, then that would be a great thing for the city. And that's what we want to do.
Paul, stay on the line. We'll take your details so we get a response.
We'll get you all the figures for what we're going to be offering you. We're coming down to Paul in Herne Bay.
Hi, Boris.
How are you?
Hello, sir.
Not too bad. Just a quick question. I'm a bus driver. I've been a bus driver for the last 10 years. Basically, I'm doing a 48 to 50 hour week just to take home about £500 to £600, just about. I've had this debate quite a few times between us and the underground tube drivers and why we don't get the same amount of money, because I think we do more work than what they do anyway. And not only that, I wanted to change my job and go part-time or go to 0-hour contracts, because I've had enough of slaving away on the buses and not thinking I'm getting my worth back.
Right.
So I wanted to know if you could make it possible that we're on the same par as the underground train drivers. And one other thing, as far as the cyclists are concerned, I think a lot of them have driving licences, so why can't they have points on their licence when they do go through red lights as well? That's another thing I wanted to throw in.
Okay, Paul. Well, listen, I mean, look, it's lots of good points. I mean, Paul, we can't put everybody on the same contracts. I'm afraid it's just not realistic. As you know, the bus companies are on a very different basis from the tube drivers. They are different jobs. I think bus drivers do a wonderful job in London. If you're looking for a new job, by the way, we're now opening for applications for the drivers of the night tube. You may be interested.
Hang on, you haven't got permission to do it.
What's happened is...
What are you going to do? Pay them before they can drive the damn thing?
What we're doing is we are... Because we couldn't get agreement with
You still haven't got agreement,
we couldn't get agreement with the unions about one package where we paid everybody, the drivers, extra money to do it without changing their overall working hours and all the rest of it. We had a very good package. They didn't like that. We're doing a new approach, which I think is completely, it's a no-brainer. I can't see why it should in any way fall foul of our friends in the trades unions. We're going to have 300 new part-time jobs.
What, just night drivers?
Just night drivers. And now people who are existing drivers can, of course, apply for that. And
slam dunk. They're in straight away.
Some of them have. And we've had about 4,300.
How much would I earn as a night driver?
I can't give you the figures off the top, but if you want to apply in it, we'll definitely.
No, but I'm just interested.
I'm sure it would be a very
just
good.
Roughly, how much?
I think when do you knock off this job? When do you?
10 a.m.
10 a.m. I think
sometimes I'm not out till 10 past.
I think you'd make an excellent.
Literally, I have to hang around for 10 minutes to talk to a load of boys.
I'm very sorry. I think you'd make an excellent night tube driver.
But you don't know what I'd earn,
and I don't want to. I don't want
to get my hopes up.
Okay,
last couple of questions.
Very keen to get you on board.
Wendy in West Wickham.
We've got a load of people applying now. On Paul's second point was about cyclists. I just want to address that because you're making a very good point. I think bus drivers in our city do an amazing job. They are wonderful. And speaking as a cyclist, I cannot praise them too highly for the way they are aware of cyclists, the way they make sure that they don't intimidate or run us over. And there'll be other cyclists who've had bad experiences, but that's been my experience. And cyclists, we do come down very hard on them when they jump the lights. We have repeated operations, safe ways, where we arrest them and we find them, and that's the way I want to see it.
Nick in Kingston, the Met Police let Jihadi John II, I don't really like using that name, but we know who I mean, out on bail on charges of terrorism. He promptly left the country and got on a bus to Paris. What has Boris Johnson said to Bernard Hogan about this?
I'm raising that with the police.
What does that mean?
I will be discussing that with the police later today.
It's unacceptable, isn't it?
I think it's. I'll need to. I can't say that at this stage, Nick. I think I'll need to understand the circumstances in which that decision.
Well, if it is as presented,
let's see what the.
But if it is as presented, he gets out on bail and jumps a bus to Paris, and then sends mocking Twitters.
Sure. Let's see what the explanation.
So when are you meeting with Mr. Hogan?
I will be. I saw the police yesterday, so I had a long meeting with them yesterday. Where I'll be having further conversations. Put it that way, later today.
As a matter of urgency.
Well, I'm not going to tell you when I'm going to do it. I will be having.
We want to ensure this doesn't happen again.
Well, let's see exactly what has happened.
Wendy in West Wickham, are the junior doctors right to strike?
Well, I think that the junior doctors, as I understand it, have decided to call off their strike. And
when have you heard that?
I think it was on the front page of the the Daily Telegraph, I think, is from memory. I think if you consult
go ahead.
This thing called the news, consult this thing called the newspaper.
That's cool. I don't know how you read that headline. Junior doctors plan strike action. Well, that's exactly what it says.
My edition said call off strike action.
Well, it's unknown to Jeremy Hunt. I spoke to him at 7:20 this morning. Yes, I did. Yes. I know journalism wasn't necessarily a career in which you shone, but normally a headline gives you an idea of the story, and the idea of planned strike action means it's on.
Maybe I read this headline so fast on my way here that somehow my natural optimism caused me to gloss it as call off.
So I come back, I refer you to my earlier question.
Maybe I just read plan scrap rather than plan. Look, I think...
Do you support the... This man could be Prime Minister. Oh, my God.
I think there's nothing...
Russia's not invading. Russia's invading, right!
They have recently called off their strike action. I'm correct in saying that.
We're back on now.
Thank you. They now seem to be back on. Thank you for pointing that out. I think it's wrong.
Right.
I think. By the way, I think Jeremy Hunt has done an absolutely outstanding job with the health service, and I think he's managed a difficult situation very well. I think it would be very, very odd if the BMA were to initiate this strike action, which would do a lot of
6 years ago, you said it's scandalous. In the 21st century, London people have to resort to sleeping on the streets, which is why I pledged to end rough sleeping in the capital by 2012. It's doubled in the last 5 years.
And that is
why have you failed?
That is, alas, is partly a function of the very considerable numbers we've seen.
What happened to your pledge?
The very considerable numbers we've seen of people coming to this city, particularly from European Union accession countries, and I'm afraid that is the reality. Where we have been successful, and I congratulate the work of the London Delivery Board, is in led by Rick Blakeway, is in stopping them spending more than one night on the street. So if you're homeless in London, and by the way, we have every night several hundred people on the streets of London. In New York, they have about 36,000 people on the streets every night. There are different orders. There are different orders of magnitude, but what we do is we try and help them first bounce. They arrive on the streets. We have outreach teams. We have people there who try to help them into shelter, help them into hostels for the second night. And if you say to me, has it got worse? Are we seeing more homelessness? Are we seeing more people on the streets? Yes, we are. But that is, I'm afraid, partially a function of the fantastic magnetic effect London is having at the moment across Europe, that is still ravaged by the euro as a centre of economic dynamism.
Right. And on that positive note, we end the first one of the year. Thank you very much indeed, London Mayor Boris, and indeed Happy New Year to you and your staff and your family and your staff. Thank you. Here on LBC.